Ladies and gentlemen, I want to read you a New York Post article. Biden's tax increase could hit people earning $200,000, White House clarifies. Why are they raising taxes? See, this makes no sense at all. You have essentially ended American economic life, shut down every state. Well, the states that have done the worst are Democratic-run states in terms of unemployment. 13 of the top 14 the other day I checked on the Bureau of Labor Statistics. 13 of the top 14 highest unemployment rates are Democratic-run states. The lowest unemployment rates are in red states. If you go to the New York Times statistics pertaining to the crisis, the greatest lives lost are in 7 Democratic-run states. 7 of the top 11 states with the greatest number of lives lost are Democratic-run states. They happen to also correlate with the highest unemployment rates. They also happen to correlate with the highest per capita rates, according to the New York Times. The top 4, last I checked, the top 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 highest per capita rates are Democratic-run states. They've presided over the worst economic outcomes, the worst outcomes and results when it comes to their heavy-handed and draconian policies, yet they pontificate the most. They say, oh, well, we have to do this. We have to end life as we know it. We have to turn the country into a dystopian nightmare because Orange Man, oh, but no, not that, science. And now they want to raise taxes. It's different if you had, let's say they were trying to implement Medicare for all. Oh, we have to pay for it. Okay, that's different. But why? So they're not gonna, or universal basic income. So none of these ideas will ever pass the Democratic, will never be passed by the Democratic Party. They utilize these ideas to deceive left-leaning voters, progressives, to have them vote Democrat no matter what, vote blue no matter who, and you have AOC and Bernie Sanders just funneling voters back into the Democratic Party, saying one day you'll get Medicare for all, Green New Deal legislation, universal basic income, $15 minimum wage, which they're not going to get. And then the rebuttal is always, well, it's better than Republicans. Not in terms of foreign policy. I voted for President Trump for a number of reasons, primarily because of foreign policy. He's the antithesis of a despot. Despots and authoritarians and tyrants help implement mass incarceration like President Biden did with the crime bill. Authoritarians send people overseas, men and women, to fight in never-ending conflict. That's what Biden voted for. That's Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld's foreign policy. That's the Lincoln Project influence upon the world. Now they're completely disgraced. Even the New York Times wants to distance itself from them. But you have Biden tax hike and President Trump brought Americans back, especially from two countries that one country President Obama got us into, and he negotiated a deal to get us out of a country that Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld got us into for 20 years. And Biden now wants to keep Americans there indefinitely. That is the biggest moral dilemma we face as a country, ladies and gentlemen. It's not anything that you hear on Twitter. The biggest moral dilemma we face is never-ending, perpetual military conflict. But New York Post, Biden tax hike could hit people earning $200,000, White House clarifies. Okay, you want to raise taxes when the economy has been decimated because you have such a firm grasp on science that you've presided over the worst outcomes? How does that work? White House press, and by the way, this is, I would say, 50% the Democratic Party's fault and 50% the Republican Party's fault. Everything that we've experienced the past couple of years, it's not Trump's fault. Trump tried his best to open up the economy. You could have had safety measures and protocols, and Democrats don't have a leg to stand on in terms of pontificating or preaching or telling others how it should be done. Look at Andrew Cuomo. Their entire philosophy was, oh my God, you could end Granny. And then they put infected people in elderly care facilities. I mean, this is the mindset. And where were the journalists? Not one publication, not one was going after Andrew Cuomo when he was, aside from the New York Post and some conservative publications like the Washington Examiner, Washington Times, Federalist, Daily Caller, but not one liberal mainstream publication was going after Andrew Cuomo when he put infected people into elderly care facilities. Facilities that house the most vulnerable in terms of the pandemic. Elderly people were the most vulnerable. They still are the most vulnerable. So you had to basically shut down and end society as we know it. And you couldn't get a coffee at a coffee place. You couldn't sit indoors, but you could wait for a half an hour in line or more in a Target or in a Walmart or in a supermarket or in a liquor store. And that was okay because, organisms know what. Oh, and I don't even want to get into it. You just you shut down society. You don't stop people from interacting. You just funnel them into locations where they're stuck within. I don't even want to get into it. Go and look. The retail chains were open. You had retail chains open. People standing in long lines. And they say, well, it's okay because of certain things. You had peaceful protests. Then they say, oh, well, there's no evidence that, nobody ever really looked or studied the issue. You had hundreds of thousands of people for months on end in close proximity with one another, oftentimes not wearing what they should be wearing. And so Democrats presided over, just look at the statistics in the New York Times. Now they want to raise taxes without, no Medicare for all, no, because, the Democratic part, the progressive policies that Bernie Sanders wanted, and Bernie Sanders is a tool of the Democratic Party. He's just there. He won't even vote on Medicare for all, but he's just there to funnel votes back into the Democratic Party. I didn't know this. I voted for him primarily. In 2016, I was the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post, the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post. I thought that he would do exactly what President Trump did, Abraham Accords, bring home Americans from never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts. That's what Trump did and was on his way to doing. That's what Biden is trying to unravel now and reverse. But Trump saved us from a very hawkish and militant Clinton White House and foreign policy. But here, Biden tax hike could hit people earning $200,000, White House clarifies. Mitch McConnell should have simply said, $3,000 check. You're all getting a $3,000 check. He tanked. The reason Republicans lost is because of Mitch McConnell, more so than anything President Trump did. Mitch McConnell single-handedly tanked the Republican Party because if you don't offer an alternative to ending society as we know it, turning every economy into this dystopian Mad Max type of world, shutting down everything. If you don't offer an alternative, say, okay, well, you know what, why don't we just take safety protocols and prevent, people who tell people who have pre-existing conditions or elderly people, to just, whatever the safety protocols are, a certain capacity within restaurants. So you don't lay off people. So then you're not seen like Democrats saw themselves as saviors. Oh, look, we're going to give you a stimulus check. Yeah, the stimulus check is needed. You've tanked the entire economy. And you didn't have any opposition from Republicans who are petrified of media coverage. Because Republicans apparently have no experts. All the experts, this is how Democrats and media just ran the country into the ground and presided over the worst outcomes. They said, well, studies and experts. But conservatives have no studies and experts. They have nothing backing. All you have Rand Paul saying, hey, wait a second, what's going on here? But the thing is, there was no debate and dialogue and discourse. And Democrats still presided over the worst outcomes because they had Whitmer and Cuomo and Murphy. God bless the people of New Jersey and God bless the people of New York. They presided over the absolute worst outcomes And they are run by Democrats, solely by Democrats. 1 out of every 5 Americans who lost his or her life lived in New York or California. And you can't just say, oh, well, they're the most populous states. New York has one of the highest per capita rate in the country. So you can't just say it's because of population. The Democratic-run states were completely mismanaged. They blamed Trump. It wasn't Trump's fault. It was the Democratic governor's fault. And it was this zeal and this religious kind of, they viewed this, they were the high priests of morality and science. And in reality, look at the outcomes. And nobody ever looks at the aggregate outcomes. They can slice and dice, but if you look at the aggregate outcomes, Democrats did the worst, according to the New York Times. But here, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki on Wednesday clarified that President Biden's proposed tax hike would apply to people who earn $200,000 per year if they are married to someone who make the same amount. Psaki said her daily press briefing that the proposed $400,000 threshold for tax increases applies to families rather than individuals. The clarification significantly lowers the tax threshold announced by Biden in the ABC News interview that aired Wednesday. So where's but Biden lied, Pinocchio? You'll never find that. Biden's interview statement appeared to indicate that the cutoff would be $400,000 in individual income. Biden made if you make less than $400,000, you won't see a single penny in additional federal tax. But why even tax? Why raise taxes at all during this time period? Does that make any sense at all? You're still going to have millions of people who are affected. Why? And not only that, you have the highest unemployment rates. So you're going to have a lot of people in places like California and New York, but they have the highest unemployment rates in the country. So it makes no sense. What if you're going to compel somebody who owns a business to lay off somebody because of the tax hike? And it's like the Democrats are like, oh yeah, people who are morally superior will say they can afford it. It's like, well, maybe in a better economy, but this economy it was a self-induced virtual depression. The president acknowledged that an effort to raise taxes is almost certain to be met with uniform opposition from Republicans. I may not get Republican support, but I'll get the Democratic votes for a tax increase. And then he goes, if we just look at the tax rate back when it was George W. Bush, when the top rate was 39.6% of federal taxes, that would raise $230 billion a year. Yeah, but you've tanked the economy. How are you supposed to have a rebound in this country while also raising taxes? I'm not necessarily opposed to raising taxes. What I'm saying is, why raise taxes now when you've deliberately tanked the economy because science? And so Democrats passed the first major piece of legislation, so a stimulus package. So the issue with the stimulus is the following. You have made it impossible for a great many of the 320 million Americans to work. So you've made people naturally reliant on the government, which benefits the Democratic Party. I'm not speaking like I understand the way that a lot of people think. Most people who listen to, mainstream media is, it would just had to happen. It did not just have to happen. Look at the numbers. I'm not making anything up. Look at the New York Times statistics. You tell me if those statistics warrant Democrats running the country and deciding what happens. We had a Republican president without any Republican Party support. Democrats, we've had one-party rule. It's interesting. In terms of a great many topics, we've had one-party rule since 2008. Or at least since 2012. When Democrats, media, Hollywood, what they do is they bully the Republican Party, the same never-Trumpers who investigated a Republican president and utilized a dossier purchased by Clinton. They never had, it was all baseless allegations. They were all baseless claims. James Clapper is saying that moderate to high confidence Trump worked with Russia. It's not a claim that's based on anything but his opinion. They're not stating anything categorically or with certainty. So it's a baseless claim. You can say, well, I believe them, but that you can believe whatever you want to believe. If you don't have, you're not going to go, you're not going to go to prison based solely on an intelligence report saying you did something. That's based on high to moderate confidence. There has to be evidence. They set up and framed Trump, and Jeff Sessions was the biggest culprit. Paul Ryan, all the Republicans, Richard Burr in the Senate, and he had his own stock trades, but see, he gets hooked up. Almost certainly. The issue here is you look at all the mistakes Republicans made. Mitch McConnell was negotiating on not giving money to Americans at a time when he didn't do anything to offer a different viewpoint pertaining to locking down economies. This is a mess that Republicans helped make. And if you let Democrats get away with everything and without any pushback because you fear experts in studies and you don't have any experts in studies to bolster your, you could simply use existing data to bolster your viewpoint, but you didn't. Anyway, give me your thoughts below. It's pretty unbelievable. It proves Trump right. That's what Trump said. And I don't see how the economy is going to rebound in the manner that it needs to rebound for people to really get back to work. Especially in Democratic-run states. There's a national unemployment rate, but look at the unemployment rate per state. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right